The most shocking moment came not with a shout, but with a cold, hard push. There, in the very living room she had cleaned and cared for, Shani stumbled backwards, her eyes wide with disbelief. Her husband, Kofi, watched with his arms folded, his face like stone. And the woman doing the pushing was her best friend, Adjoa. "If you ever step your foot in this house again," Adjoa hissed, her beautiful face twisted with a cruelty Shani had never seen, "I will baptize you with hot water. I swear it on my mother's grave." Shani's back hit the front door, the handle digging into her spine. She looked past Adjoa's angry eyes to Kofi, pleading silently for him to stop this madness. But he just looked away, adjusting the expensive cuff of his shirt. Her heart, already cracked from months of humiliation, shattered completely. How had it come to this? And where would she go now, with nowhere to call home? To understand the shock, we must go back 2 years, to a sunny afternoon in June in the bustling city of Accra. That was the day Kofi, a handsome and proud businessman, brought his new wife, Shani, home from her village in the rolling hills of Kwahu. Shani was breathtakingly beautiful. Her skin glowed like polished cocoa, and her smile was gentle and warm. Kofi had been charmed by her quiet grace during their short courtship. But as the car pulled up to his fine house in East Legon, a doubt crept into his mind. She looked out the window at the tall buildings, her eyes wide like a child's. She was just a village girl. Would she ever fit into his sophisticated world? At first, Kofi tried to teach her. "No, Shani," he would say at dinner parties in their home in July. "We don't serve the drinks that way. Here in the city, we use a tray." His voice was loud, and the guests would fall silent. Shani's cheeks would burn with shame as she corrected herself. Kofi mistook her quietness for stupidity. He didn't see the intelligence in her eyes, only her lack of city manners. He wanted a wife who could argue politics and wear expensive heels, not one who knew how to heal a cough with ginger and honey. The corrections became constant. "Why do you speak true with such a thick village accent?" he would mock in front of his friends. "Can't you speak proper English?" Shani would swallow her words, her voice growing smaller each day. She loved Kofi, so she tried harder. She learned to make his favorite jollof rice exactly how he liked it. She kept their house spotless. But nothing was ever good enough. Her heart ached with loneliness, but she carried the pain quietly, like a precious, fragile pot balanced on her head. A year into their marriage, in December, Kofi reconnected with Adjoa. Adjoa was everything Shani was not: loud, confident, born and bred in Accra. She wore the latest fashions and laughed with her head thrown back. Kofi was mesmerized. He started coming home late, smelling of Adjoa's strong perfume. Shani would wait up, the food going cold on the table. When he arrived, he wouldn't even look at her. He started sleeping in the guest room, whispering on his phone all night. Shani cried silent tears into her pillow, the fabric growing damp with her sorrow. Desperate for a friend, Shani made a terrible mistake. She began confiding in Adjoa, whom Kofi had introduced as his old family friend. Over cups of tea in Shani's own kitchen in February, Shani poured out her heart. "He makes me feel invisible," she whispered, her voice trembling. Adjoa would pat her hand, her face full of fake sympathy. "Oh, my dear sister," Adjoa would sigh. "Men like Kofi don't know what they have. You are Adjoa." What Shani didn't know was that as soon as she left the room, Adjoa would send Kofi a text, laughing about his simple village wife. One Tuesday evening in March, the truth exploded. Shani returned early from the market. As she entered her house, she heard laughter, Kofi's laugh, and a woman's. Her feet froze to the floor. There, on her own sofa, Kofi and Adjoa were locked in a deep kiss. The bag of groceries fell from Shani's hands, tomatoes rolling across the polished floor. The two jumped apart. But instead of guilt, Kofi's face showed only irritation. "Shani," he said coldly. "This This is what real companionship looks like. That night, under the pale light of a single bulb, Kofi packed Shani's belongings into 2 old suitcases. He moved with a cold efficiency, throwing her clothes in without care. Shani stood by the door, watching her life being dismantled. "Please, Kofi," she begged, her voice a broken whisper. "I can change." Kofi zipped the last suitcase shut with a final, cruel sound. "You cannot change where you come from," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Go back to your village. You never belonged here." He placed the suitcases outside the front door. The click of the lock behind her was the loudest sound she had ever heard. Shani stood on the dark, quiet street of East Legon at midnight. The city lights shimmered, but they offered her no warmth. She was alone. She had no money, no family in Accra. The weight of her betrayal and loss pressed down on her so heavily she could barely breathe. Just as her knees began to buckle, a gentle voice spoke from a nearby car window. "Shani, is that you?" It was Kofi's friend, the only one who had ever dared to tell Kofi his behavior was wrong. Took one look at her tear-streaked face and the suitcases, and his kind eyes filled with understanding. A quiet and respectful engineer, brought Shani to his modest, peaceful home in Medina. He gave her his guest room. "Rest," he said softly. "You are safe here." For the first time in years, Shani slept without fear. The next morning, went to confront Kofi. He found Kofi and Ajua already acting like king and queen of the house. "When you accused Kofi of foolishness," Kofi laughed. "If you care for her so much, you marry her," he sneered. Left, his heart heavy. But when he returned home, a fire began to burn in Shani's eyes. She was done begging. She was done being small. Little did Kofi know, the gentle village girl he threw away was about to disappear forever, and her disappearance would be the beginning of his greatest nightmare. The extreme event that changed everything happened at the prestigious Golden Tulip Hotel in Accra, one bright Saturday afternoon in November. Kofi, feeling pleased with himself, was having lunch with Ajua. She was laughing loudly, telling a story that involved many grand hand gestures. Then, Kofi's eyes landed on a couple seated by the waterfall feature. His breath caught in his throat. It was Shani. But this was a Shani he did not know. She wore an elegant navy blue dress, her hair styled into soft curls. She was not just beautiful, she glowed with a quiet confidence that made everyone near her look twice. And the man gently holding her hand, listening to her as if her words were gold, was A wave of hot, bitter jealousy crashed over Kofi. Without thinking, he stormed over to their table, his heart pounding like a furious drum. "Shani." Kofi's voice was sharp, cutting through the calm air. She looked up, and for a second, he saw the old fear in her eyes. But it vanished, replaced by a calm steadiness that unsettled him deeply. "Kofi," she said, her voice even. Stood up slowly, placing himself slightly in front of Shani. "What is the meaning of this?" Kofi demanded, pointing at Yo. "Are you stealing my wife?" Yo's reply was calm but firm. "You have no wife here, Kofi. You threw your wife away. This woman is my fiancée." The word fiancée hit Kofi like a physical blow. He stumbled back, watching as Yo helped Shani up, and they walked away, leaving him standing alone, humiliated in the middle of the restaurant. Back at Yo's home in Medina, Shani's hands trembled. Seeing Kofi had unlocked a box of old fears. Yo made her a cup of soothing sobolo tea. "He has no power over you anymore," Yo said softly. "Your strength is your own." He then revealed his plans. With the savings from his engineering job, he was starting his own construction firm. "I want you to be a part of it," he said. "You have a sharp mind, Shani. You manage a home with nothing, imagine what you could do with a business." For the first time, someone saw her not as a village girl, but as a partner. A new dream began to blossom in her heart, pushing out the last weeds of her past. Meanwhile, in the big house in East Legon, trouble was brewing. Kofi and Adjoa's relationship, built on gossip and betrayal, began to crack. Adjoa spent money recklessly, running up huge bills for clothes and parties. She mocked Kofi when his business faced a small setback. "Where is your big city power now?" she would sneer. Her loud laughter, which he once found exciting, now gave him a headache. Kofi started to remember the peaceful, orderly home Shani kept. He remembered coming home to a warm, clean house and a hot meal. Now, he came home to loud music, mess, and demands for more money. Regret, cold and heavy, settled in his stomach. 6 months later, in May, Shani and your small construction company, Kwahu Pride Builders, won its first major contract. To celebrate, you took Shani to a beautiful resort in Aburi. Under the canopy of a giant tree, as the sun set, you got down on one knee. "Shani," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are my peace, my strength, and my greatest surprise. Will you marry me?" Tears of pure joy streamed down Shani's face. This was a love that built her up, a love that felt like home. She said yes, and her laughter rang out, clear and happy, a sound she had almost forgotten she could make. The news of their engagement traveled fast. When Kofi heard it from a mutual friend, he felt a panic so severe it made his chest tight. He drove to Yo's house like a madman. He found Shani in the small garden, tending to flowers. She looked so content. "Shani, please," Kofi begged, his pride completely gone. "I made a terrible mistake. I was blind. Come home. I will send Adjoa away today." Shani looked at him, not with anger, but with a pity that shamed him more than any shout. "Kofi," she said gently. "That house was never my home. My home is here, with the man who sees me." She turned and walked inside, leaving him standing in the dust. Broken and desperate, Kofi returned to his house to find Adjoa packing his expensive electronics into a suitcase. "What are you doing?" he yelled. Adjoa laughed. "You think I stayed for you? I stayed for this life. But now you are losing money and becoming a sad, boring man. I'm leaving." She walked out, taking his valuables and the last shred of his dignity. Kofi was left alone in the big, empty, messy house. The silence was deafening. It was then that he truly understood the value of the gentle, loving presence he had chased away. The wedding of Shani and Yo was held in her home village in Kwahu in August. It was a beautiful, vibrant celebration filled with traditional music, dancing, and genuine smiles. Shani, in her gorgeous Kent cloth, was a radiant queen. News and pictures reached Kofi in Accra. The sight of Shani's glowing happiness, surrounded by a community that loved her, was the final, painful lesson. His own family, disappointed in his behavior, had begun to distance themselves from him. He was truly alone. 1 year later, Kofi's business suffered greatly due to his poor decisions and distracted mind. He was forced to sell the big house in East Legon to pay his debts. As he packed the last of his things, he found a small, forgotten box at the back of a closet. In it were handmade cards Shani had made for him early in their marriage, for his birthday. They were simple, decorated with pressed flowers from her village. On each one, she had written a prayer for his success and happiness. He sat on the bare floor of the empty mansion and wept like a child, the echoes of his sobs bouncing off the walls that had once held her gentle love. The final, extreme event was one of public revelation. Kofi, now living in a small apartment, took a job as a mid-level manager. One day, he was sent to inspect a construction site for a new client. The site manager, a capable and respected woman, came to meet him. It was Shani. She had grown Kwahu Pride Builders with Yo into a successful, trusted company. She stood before him in a hard hat and boots, confident and strong, directing workers with quiet authority. She recognized him, gave a polite, professional nod, and simply said, "The foundation inspections are over here, sir." She treated him not with hatred, but with the distant courtesy of a stranger. In that moment, Kofi saw the full measure of his loss. The village girl he had despised was now a queen he could never reach, and he was just a man coming to her, hat in hand, for a job. He had lost a treasure, and the world now saw her shine, while he faded into the shadows of his own making. Hope you love the story. Kindly subscribe to the channel, like and share it with your loved ones.